Sawyers make a distinction between the term boards and lumber. Boards are typically less than 2 inches thick. For example, a 1x4 is a board while a 2x4 is lumber. After logs have been milled into lumber, the lumber must be properly taken care of to ensure that the quality does not deteriorate, or more importantly, that the value is increased. This discussion is a most important one for anyone anticipating operating a sawmill, even for just your own wood or purchasing green wood. Green wood, freshly cut, is most of the time wetter than 20% moisture content, and that 20% moisture content is needed to minimize the potential of fungus infection of the wood. In an earlier discussion, we talked about increasing in value a green ash board by drying. Common terms that describe the moisture content of wood are green lumber, wood or boards used here interchangeably, air-dried lumber, and kiln-dried lumber. Let us start by discussing what these terms mean. Each of these terms has as its base definition its moisture content. Wood moisture content is defined on a dry weight basis. This is important because many rural sawyers are also grain farmers, and the moisture content of grain is defined on a wet basis. Analytically speaking, the moisture content of wood is equal to the weight of water divided by the weight of dry wood. There are 3 levels of moisture content are important. Green lumber is greater than 30% moisture content. Air-dried lumber is usually from 10 to 12% moisture content. Kiln-dried lumber is usually less than 6% moisture content. The moisture content of green lumber, freshly cut lumber, can vary greatly from cottonwood at 160% moisture content. In green cottonwood, there's more water than wood, to cedar that may be 30 to 40% moisture content wood. Most other species are between 30 and 160% moisture content when green. To ensure that wood quality does not deteriorate, green lumber needs to be dried as soon as possible after milling. I get green wood stickered and drying in less than 10 hours from the time of cutting. This is critical in the summer and not so important in the fall, winter, and spring when the ambient temperature is much cooler. In the summer, I put a fan on my stickered wood. I've had deterioration without it. 2 methods are typically used, with a combination of both being common. The first that we will discuss is air drying. Air drying involves properly stickering the green lumber and ensuring that adequate airflow across the boards occurs. In South Dakota, the lowest obtainable equilibrium moisture content using air drying methods is about 10 to 12%. A moisture content of 10 to 12% is acceptable for construction lumber. However, air drying will not allow us to obtain the 6 to 8% moisture content needed for wood to be used in homes as furniture and other high-valued finished wood products. To obtain 6 to 8% moisture content will require us to kiln dry our wood or store the stickered wood in an area that has significantly higher average temperature. Wood stored in the second floor of my gambrel roof shop reaches 6% moisture content after about a year of storage. On your screen now is a cross-section view of a properly stickered lumber pile. Note that the stickers are usually greater than 3/4 of an inch thick and are greater than 1 inch wide. They are placed no more than 24 inches apart, placed close to the ends, and stickers placed uniformly on top of each other. This is done to allow airflow and drying to occur, preserving the wood's quality. Now that you've seen the theoretical way of stickering, let us get to the real world. The challenge of the urban sawyer is that our logs come in all shapes and sizes. As you can see from many of my stickered piles, I have not met the theoretical standard, but I still remember the theory and try to do as close to it as I possibly can. Drying lumber is in equilibrium with the atmospheric conditions around it. A rule of thumb of wood drying is that the equilibrium moisture content of wood equals the relative humidity of the air in your building divided by 5. Prompt drying after logs are milled into lumber will often protect untreated lumber from attack by stain, decay, and some insects. For instance, untreated lumber uniformly dried to below 20% moisture content is immune to attack by fungi. With protective storage, it will keep that immunity. However, dried lumber that regains moisture to a level of more than 20% again becomes susceptible to stain and decay. Air temperature is highly important. The stain and decay fungi grow most rapidly at 70 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Mold grows no more than 1/5 as rapidly at 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit and ceases growth about 32 degrees Fahrenheit. As a result, wood at about 25 to 30% moisture content, stored in solid piles in warm weather, 70 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, may show evidence of stain within a week and early decay infection within a month. The initial infections, which are not visible, probably started shortly after the wood was sawed. With temperatures of 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit, similar deterioration requires 5 or more times as long. At 32 degrees Fahrenheit or below, the lumber can remain in solid piles indefinitely without adverse effects. A most important question is, how long will it take for air drying to reach an equilibrium moisture content of 20%? On the screen we see a graph prepared by the U.S. Department of Agriculture Forest Service, which is useful in determining air drying times. We're using Madison, Wisconsin, which was the closest location to South Dakota for which data was available. By the time of year that drying is started, as you can see, drying 1-inch thick oak to 20% moisture content, if started in May and July, requires 60 to 70 days. However, if drying is started in October to December, it will take 180 days. Since it is clear that air drying requires a significant amount of time before wood is safe to use, and because we cannot obtain the 6 to 8% moisture content needed for furniture or other high-value finished wood products, an alternative is to kiln dry the wood. The USDA recommends that wood used for interior finished woodwork in most of the upper Midwest of the United States be dried to 6 to 8% moisture content. Kiln drying is the most reliable way to achieve this. Kiln drying is the process of applying heat to lower the relative humidity of the air used to dry and to provide enough heat to sanitize, that is, to eliminate insect and microorganism threats to the wood. This psychometric chart is most useful in helping us to understand the principles of kiln drying. An example will help explain the chart's usefulness. On a 50-degree Fahrenheit day with a relative humidity of 80%, the chart tells us that the air contains about 40 grains of water vapor per pound of dry air. Using our divide by 5 rule, the equilibrium moisture content of the wood on that day would be 80 divided by 5, or approximately 16. If this air were heated to 80 degrees with no water added, it would still contain about 40 grains of water vapor per pound of dry air, but following the chart straight to the right, we find that the relative humidity would be about 25% and the potential equilibrium moisture content in the kiln would be about 5%.